Time to leap the dips! Oh man, I might actually want to hold on to this one. Oh.
I've been getting increasingly concerned about the state of Lakemont Park over the last few years, but the time has come where I have to talk about it. It's definitely one of the most unusual amusement parks I've ever been to, and even calling it an amusement park anymore isn't entirely accurate, but I'll come back to that. For those of you who aren't local, Lakemont Park is located in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and has a storied past that goes back to 1893, placing it within the top 10 oldest operating amusement parks in the United States. Despite that long history, though, the park has had a turbulent existence, going through numerous ups and downs, including periods of bankruptcy, closures, and restructuring. Somehow, though, the community has always come together to keep the place going, something I absolutely respect. Lakemont is most famous for its roller coaster Leap the Dips, known around the world as the oldest standing roller coaster, having opened in 1902. It's one of only a handful of side friction coasters still around today, but it too almost closed for good. Leap the Dips stood nearly abandoned for 12 years as Lakemont Park was rebranded into Boyertown, USA. Yes, Boyer, as in the Mallow Cup Company. Apparently trying to make a chocolate-themed amusement park only a couple hours away from a much larger chocolate-themed amusement park didn't pan out so well, and the Boyer Company backed away from the park after only 2 years. This is an era I would love to do a video on, but there's hardly any documentation out there on it. Gonna have to do some digging for that one. We do have to thank the Boyer ownership for one thing though, and that's the addition of Skyliner, the park's other major coaster. It was relocated from the defunct Roseland Park in New York and added as the newest major attraction during the Boyertown era. Fast forward to the present day though, and Lakemont Park is considerably different than how it appeared in that VHS footage. See, Lakemont Park was, for most of its life, a traditional amusement park. It had several roller coasters, a decent collection of flat rides, midway games, mini golf, the works really, and it always operated on a pay-per-ride system. Well, except for the Boyertown era, yet another reason why that venture failed. But starting in 2016, the park was once again falling on hard times. I remember at the end of 2016, I was in college and trying to plan a day trip with a few friends to go ride the world's oldest roller coaster the following year, only to find out soon after that the park was closed for all of 2017. The same thing happened again in 2018, and by the time the park did reopen in 2019, I was out of college and a good bit farther away from the park, so it wasn't as short a drive for me. During that 2-year closure, the park completely reinvented itself. Rather than the rides being the focus, Lakemont pivoted to being a more recreational facility with a few rides. The majority of the flat rides were removed. Where there used to be roads with rides on both sides were now just empty fields. Instead, we saw additions like the refurbished mini-golf course, batting cages, basketball courts, and volleyball courts. A few rides did remain, mostly the larger ones, including Leap the Dips and Skyliner, as well as go-karts, antique cars, kids' monster trucks, and the park's train ride, but the former water park was left abandoned, which is how it still stands today. While many, including myself, were upset to see this movement away from the traditional rides the park had offered for decades, it seemed that this was the only path forward to keep the park operating, given their financial troubles. I was finally able to visit in the summer of 2022, and I went there twice during that summer alone. I returned briefly in 2023, and they even opened the gift shop for me when my fiancé and I called ahead just so we could get these sweet Leap the Dip shirts. A+ customer service right there. As for my 2022 visits, I had a great time, all things considered. The ride-ops were friendly and super chill with my friends and I getting our off-ride coaster footage, and ticket prices were very reasonable. I was able to get rides on both major coasters, albeit at separate times. See, the reason I went twice that summer is because both times a different coaster was open. During my June visit, Leap the Dips was open, and when I went back in July, Skyliner was open. I have never seen both coasters operating at the same time, and now I might never get to. All this background has led to today, as Lakemont Park dropped the news last month that they will not be operating any of their rides for the 2024 season. That's right, the only things you can do at Lakemont this year is all the recreational stuff, no rides at all. I guess you can have a picnic there too, they certainly have the pavilions for it. This decision to close all the rides for this year has seriously worried a lot of people. Not just coaster enthusiasts either, as most Altoona locals have voiced their concerns in the comments of Lakemont Park's original post. Having a community park is certainly a nice thing for the area, but the main draw for Lakemont has always been its rides, especially Leap the Dips. If not for this coaster, the park would not be nearly as famous as it is now. Which begs the question, what will happen to Leap the Dips, and by extension, Skyliner? Leap the Dips was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1996, which you'd think would mean it's protected from demolition, and it is, to a certain extent. The United States government offers tax credits and tax incentives to any individuals or organizations that are willing to invest into the preservation of these structures, but this does not make them immune from demolition. I hate to say it, but as maintenance costs continue to rise for such a unique and uncommon type of coaster, there is a real possibility that we could see Leap the Dips close for good. Now with that said, I am absolutely certain that there would be even more pushback from the community if this were to happen, and fundraisers would no doubt be organized to help keep the coaster in operational condition. They did it back in the 90s, and we could do it again now. This is, of course, a worst-case scenario. I highly doubt the current management of the park genuinely wants to tear down their greatest claim to fame, so I think the most likely outcome could be more prolonged periods of the coaster standing but not operating, or even becoming a solely taxpayer-operated coaster, and only operating a few days of the year for special events. All this talk of historical preservation, however, does not apply to Skyliner, at least not at a legal level. Despite dating back to 1960, Skyliner does not have the same designations as Leap the Dips, though it is an Ace Coaster classic. There would certainly be objections and outcry if Lakemont were to demolish Skyliner, but in the eyes of the law, they would be perfectly within their right to do that, and that's what worries me. Skyliner frequently gets overshadowed by Leap the Dips, but it's a great wooden coaster in its own right. Yeah, it's pretty rough, but it's rough in the way that you can still laugh and have a great time as the coaster throws you around. I would hope, if Lakemont chooses not to reopen Skyliner, that another park would step in and relocate the coaster. It's not easy to relocate a wooden coaster, but hey, Skyliner was already relocated once. I'm looking at you, Knobles. It was Knobles, after all, that inspired the relocation of Skyliner in the 80s. This would likely require heavy restoration, though. As anyone who has ridden Skyliner will tell you, the coaster is not in the best of shape, and it looks like it could collapse at any moment. I've always viewed that as part of its charm, though. I rode it 14 times in a row back in 2022, that's how much I liked it, but that may have had more to do with the lack of crowds that day, or any day for that matter. Yeah, it all comes down to money. Every time I've been to Lakemont Park, it felt eerily empty, and it gave me a bad feeling that something like this would happen, which is why I took so many videos of the coasters. This lack of funds was also the reason behind the 2017 and 2018 closure, which resulted in the removal of the majority of flat rides from the park. As much fun as they are, amusement parks are businesses first and foremost, and without substantial income, they can't afford to add anything new, much less maintain what they have. As Lakemont is not near a major city, they're already at a disadvantage in attracting customers, and much of that customer base has been pulled away by the nearby Del Grosso's amusement park, which doesn't have coasters the size of Leap the Dips or Skyliner, but does offer a larger quantity of attractions, food, as well as a fantastic water park. This may also explain why Lakemont's own water park has been abandoned for nearly a decade now. What the park needs to do is find a way to bring back the local families, and they seem to be attempting that by eyeing up potential summer festivals and doubling down on bringing in large picnic groups. Whether this pays off for them, we'll have to wait and see, but it's good that management hasn't completely given up. The moral of all this is get out and support your local amusement parks, no matter how small. We live in a time where parks like these are becoming increasingly rare, and large corporate parks are the new norm. While I have nothing against the larger parks and the rides they offer, smaller parks offer a more easygoing, comfortable vibe that can't be replicated, and sometimes they offer truly unique rides. Case in point, Leap the Dips. So I'll be holding my breath here as the 2024 season continues, and hopefully the Lakemont ride closures will only be for a single season. I'll be watching closely, as I'm sure most of you will, for any sort of announcement on the fate of these coasters and the rest of the rides as the year goes on. But what do you think? Can Lakemont Park bounce back from this, or is that just wishful thinking? Please let me know your thoughts on this whole situation in the comments, and spread the word so hopefully no coasters have to be torn down during all this. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Rampaging Rex Productions.